Hello everybody, this is Paul Christino here. YouTube, internet, Steve-O. It's a very monumental day for me. This is the first time in a decade that I'm actually going to take a run due to all the structural issues that I had over the past 10 years. Now, I know my body's going to hold up, but we got to see about this lung capacity. They used to call me the iron lung back in the day, but I don't know anymore, so we'll see. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye. Run, Forrest. Run. Run, Forrest. 3, 2, 1, and action. Hello everyone, my name is Paul Christino, and I want to tell you a little bit about my TMS story. Now before I do that, I want to thank you, Steve-O, for writing the book you have, living the life you have, and putting your blood, sweat, and tears into all your work. It's really helped me, and I know it's helped a lot of people. And I also got to give it up to Dr. John Sarno upstairs for all the work that he did. Really changed a lot of people's lives. So let me tell you a little bit about my story. Before I left my home at about 18 years old, I had 12, 13, 14 broken bones, ribs, damage to my internal organs, my leg, torn ligaments in my hip, my ankle, broke my arm, my shoulder, neck injuries, lower back, herniated discs, a lot of contact sports, played really rough when I was a kid. And listen, I'm not built for that. I go 5'9", 160 now. So when I was in high school playing football, it just was not a good mix. And all the other crazy stuff that I was doing as a kid. So by the time I got out of the house and in my early 20s, I just became sedentary. All those injuries settled in my body. And I got into producing music, so it gave me an excuse to sit in front of the keyboard. And my body just morphed into this sunken chest, sloped shoulder, short leg. And as I was still trying to, work out and play sports, I still had a lot of energy in my early 20s. Things just progressively got worse. And playing through those injuries and having more collisions, especially on my right side, just seemed to really put my body in a terrible position. Thankfully, I was able to get some relief through chiropractic and acupuncture and those things. But the injuries never seemed to leave me. In fact, they kept progressively getting worse. Now, there's another component to this. I'm not going to go too deeply into my personal issues, but there were some other things, that were really contributing to what I know now as my TMS. A lot of emotional stuff that was being repressed. And so as I progressed in life, I wasn't dealing with those emotional issues at all. I wasn't taught to do that. I was taught to, I see an obstacle in front of me, I slam my head through it. That's how I get through my problems. And I was brainwashed into thinking that all of the injuries that I was feeling were obviously structural in nature. I get the x-rays, get the MRIs, and yeah, there's bulging discs, there's a extrusion in my L5-S1 that was supposedly pressing against the nerve, which was giving me sciatica and pain in my foot and just ridiculous amounts of pain. Now, I got into Jujitsu, and in 2006, I was competing a lot and traveling around and doing pretty well, and I had a really, really bad, what I thought was a very serious neck injury training one day. I was grappling with this guy, and he came down with all of his weight. I was on my side, on my neck, and his 225 pounds came down on this shoulder, and it was as if this part of my shoulder touched that, compressed me. And I felt my entire frame just crushed. What I learned was that after the x-rays and the MRIs, that I had all these rib heads dislodged from my spine, a lot of soft tissue damage, separated clavicle, dislocated jaw. It was a pretty serious injury in my book, and it was all on the same side that I had previously injured as a young person. And it completely threw my life in a tailspin. But looking back now, I know that those physical injuries were nothing compared to the tumultuous landscape that I had going on inside. The anger, the sadness, the depression, the shame, and then not having the tools to even recognize that that was contributing to what was going on in my body. So like I said, I just pushed forward. Now, I'm 44 years old now, and it took me this long to really delve into the source of my pain. When I started reading Dr. Sarno's and Steve, your book, it like I said, the first time I put it down, this can't be too easy. I had done enough soul searching and enough research to know that there's an obvious connection between the mind and the body. But come on. And I'm a meat and potatoes kind of guy. I was a rough and tumble young guy. And I thought that, yeah, it's going to help me, but it's going to take me about 50% of the way. And then the other 50% is structural, and I'm just going to have to find a way to live with it. So in the time after I hurt my neck, up until just recently, I changed my whole life. I tailored my life around being careful, being scared to re-injure myself. And it got to a point to where I started becoming listless again and losing my zest. And I still had a mind and a heart full of all that intense, repressed rage that I buried inside of myself for decades. So I always wanted to play the drums. That was something that I always wanted to do. And so, but what happened is strange is that my mind, every time I got involved in a hobby or something that I enjoyed, it seemed to uncover all of these injuries that I had suffered, or some new injuries that kind of came to fruition from old injuries. So for instance, when I picked up the drums a short time ago, and as soon as I started playing, I started getting tennis elbow in my right arm. And before I even played, now this is where my mind state was. Before I even started playing, I was researching injuries that drummers could get from RSI, from repetitive stress injuries. So even before I went into the game, I'm already worried about getting hurt. I'm working out, I'm doing yoga, I'm doing push-ups. I'm not going all the way when I'm doing push-ups because it's hurting my clavicle and my shoulder. My lat is hurting. I can't, now these doctors are telling me, don't do any pull-downs, pull-ups, chin-ups, anything over my head because it's going to affect my trap, which was very quote-unquote inflamed. So when I got into the drums, before I even hit the first snare drum, I'm worrying about getting hurt. So I'm looking up the proper way to grip the stick, and yeah, I started off and it was fun, but it got miserable really fast. And I seemed to have this deep, deep need and yearning to screw up everything that I enjoy and then blame it on the fact that I'm damaged somehow. Blame it on these old injuries. Self-sabotage at its finest. I was a master at that. So let me tell you what happened. A short time ago, my wife goes away on a business trip. So I'm alone for 4 or 5 days. And I'm miserable. I'm laying there in pain, waking up every morning, barely do anything. My back is, I'm hunched over, I'm sloped over, my chest is caved in. I'm going to the chiropractor. He's popping and locking me. it's working for a little while. Acupuncture, same thing. It works. I got these yoga blocks, postural exercises I have to do 3 times a day. And like my whole life was revolved around these freaking exercises. And she's gone, so I have a lot of time with my own head. And I'm thinking, I have to do something. My life, I'm grateful for being alive, but my life is starting to suck now. I'm right in the middle of my life, and the first half wasn't roses. I need to make sure that something changes. I need to do something. Somehow I'm watching. So I'm a Larry David fan, Curb Your Enthusiasm. So I'm on YouTube, and somehow I find the film All the Rage, and Larry David and Howard Stern are in that film, and I see the preview. I'm like talking about back pain, and I start watching it, and they're referencing John Sarno, and I'm like, wait a second, I have that book. So I went back and I gave it a read, and I'm like, okay. Now, if Larry David and Howard Stern say it's real, it has to be real. No, but really. I started looking. Now, I live in New York City. So, Dr. Sarno taught at NYU. Legitimate institution. Whatever. So they say. So I was watching interviews with him, and there were such conviction in his words. He's so sure about what he was talking about was true. You could see that he was a genuine person. There was no guile in him. He was a real guy, the real deal. So I read the book. That was the Mind-Body Prescription. That's the one I read. That's the one I had. And I'm thinking, okay, I know these philosophies to be true. And when he's a doctor, so when he's bringing up studies and talking about the studies so coherently, and talking about where a lot of the Western medical establishment has gone wrong with the prescribing the anti-inflammatories, and how surgeries are nothing is successful. And I know people who have had surgery and are on a whole bunch of different anti-inflammatories, and I see A, it doesn't do anything for their back pain or their pain in general, and B, it just brings up a whole myriad of side effects that are even more debilitating than what they took them for in the first place. And I didn't want to be that person. So I digested that book. So I watched the documentary, and Howard Stern gives the eulogy at Dr. Sarno's funeral. So I'm looking up, Howard Stern, blah, 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 and then Steve O, you pop up. And there was an excerpt talking about how how Howard Stern had a flare-up of his back pain, and he got into your book, and he was praising you. And I'm thinking, look, I know Howard Stern. I know him, through his show. He's not going to praise anybody. He'd rather do the opposite, it seems like. So when he was talking about it with such conviction, I said, okay, I need to read this book. Meanwhile, this is day 2 of my wife gone. I'm still miserable. Okay, now Dr. Sarno sunk in quite well, but I'm laying around with me and my cats, and I'm like, okay, give me a little bit more. So I start reading page 1. And folks, page 1 by itself, page 1 brought me to tears. Page 1 brought me to tears. And I'm thinking, okay, I need to really sit in this, because I know there's something coming that I need to hear. So briefly, over the next 2 or 3 days, all I did on my free time was read your book. And I'm reading it, putting it down, reflecting on my life. Still in pain. And then, Steve, when I started reading about your journey and how it started to affect you and what you were feeling and everything that you had gone through, the trials that you had gone through with your wife, how all of this anger and this rage manifested in your body, how debilitating it was, and the courage and the gumption you showed to get back on your horse and really digest initially what Dr. John Sarno had presented to you in the world. And there was a part where you're talking about the pain in your foot and how your final straw was, with that pain in your foot, how you were going to test this theory of the pain being emotional in nature and not structural. With that golf ball in your foot, how you started slamming it on the concrete, and how you were running and barely being able to get around the block because the pain was traveling. Now that's how I knew in me that there's something very TMS-ish about my pain. Because when I would play the drums, it would go to my forearm. When I'm doing push-ups, it's in my trap. When I'm getting up in the morning, it's in my lower back. When I'm stressed out, it's in the base of my skull. Then it's manifesting in anxiety and in feelings of lowness, sadness. And I'm saying, listen, I'm experiencing this. This is exactly what's in the book. It's moving. And that's a sign, if it's moving, I got you. I figured you out. So that was a key for me, feeling the pain move. And if I didn't read the book, I really would not have been able to make that parallel. That the pain, I'm chasing it down. It's trying to find vulnerable areas in my body to lodge itself so it could protect me from what I'm really feeling, from the issues that I really need to address deep down in my soul and in my spirit. So that was one day. There was another part in the book that really that it really resonated with me, about how waking up in the morning. It was the part about the different brain waves, and how so many mornings I would wake up in the morning or very early in the morning, the same time, and for a span of like 10 seconds, my whole body is calm. I feel amazing. No injuries, no inflammation, no pain. And then as I start coming to and becoming conscious from a deep sleep, everything would rush in. My body would be racked with pain. So even before I started reading these books, this was a long time ago, years ago, I would say, what's going on here? Which one of me is real? Is it the part of me that's waking up not in pain? Or is it this other part that right when I come to, everything is literally on my shoulders and on my neck, and it's this load that I'm carrying? Which one am I? I feel like two different people at two different times of the day. So, Steve, when you referenced that in your book, that was another sign. That was another sign. And I know you stated in your book that a lot of people would rather deal with the physical than the emotional aspect of their pain. But I think for me, it was the opposite. I wanted it to be, I was hoping that it would be emotional. Because truth be told, guys, what I do is I'm a trauma recovery coach. I have a practice here in Manhattan. So all day I deal with people who have been traumatized, usually since childhood. So I'm surrounded and I'm inundated, and I inundate myself with helping people heal their emotional body. My life is dedicated to that. And my life has been dedicated to that for myself. I had done a lot of work on myself. So I'm well versed in that process. So much so where I can walk shoulder to shoulder with people who are going through that process. One thing I thought I never would have control of is the structural integrity of my body. I thought I was going to be enslaved by that for the rest of my life. I've even had a chiropractor tell me that I'm going to be in a wheelchair in my 50s. So I'm thinking, he went to school for 8 years, whatever it is, so he must be right. He must be right. The orthopedist who took x-rays of my shoulder told me I'm going to have problems. He wears a white coat and glasses, and he has a clipboard, and he's writing notes about me. He has to be right. He looks very smart. I see his degree up on his wall. pretty amazing, you know? So who am I to say how I can heal? Or who am I to say what the truth is about healing your body? I'm a citizen. I'm not an MD. Thank God now. It would be a sucky existence going to school for 100 years and then getting out and be crushed with student $200,000 worth of debt, and then you realize that what you went to school for is not real. Now, some of it, obviously, people's lives are saved, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about chronic pain, which seems to be existing in the majority of people at some level or another. So I was actually happy when I made the connection. So here's what happened that's amazing. I didn't even make it through a third of the book when I said, you know what? Screw this. No more. I put my Kindle down. My body's in pain. I get up and I start shadow boxing. I start shadow boxing like Muhammad Ali around my apartment. I'm putting music on. I'm throwing punches full force. I'm doing push-ups full force, pull-ups. I go outside, I'm jumping rope. And I'm noticing, wait a second. My pain is starting to move again and it's starting to dissipate. But what was funny was when I started doing all of this, I had pain in my neck and my shoulder, and then it lodged in the middle of my back where I never had pain before. But I knew I got it. I knew what it was trying to do. So I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Day 4 of my wife being gone, I was 90% free of pain. And she's calling me on the phone, sweetheart, how you doing? Usually I say, I don't know, everything hurts. But this time I said, I'm doing amazing. She knew I was supposed to go see this new chiropractor. Did you go see the chiropractor? I said, we'll talk about that when you get home. She was like, okay. After day 5 or whatever, she comes home. She asked me how I'm doing. I said, sweetheart, we need to talk. About what? I referenced what's going on in her body. She had an injury to her shoulder years ago, and it started to bother her. And she's always on the phone, doing social media and stuff. For her business, she started to develop carpal tunnel and all that crap. And I said, listen, I don't think your shoulder isn't injured, and you don't have carpal tunnel. She's like, how do you know? I was like, just read this. 5-6 days, and my pain is 99.9999 repeating % gone. And I'm thinking, look at this. Look at this. For 1 second, I kicked myself for not reading the book a year prior when I first had it, but I wasn't ready. I must have not been ready because I didn't. But I was one of those people who was so ready to heal and so open-minded, which is what you need to be. You have to be open-minded to this truth. It's the truth. Our injuries are not structural. Our pain is not structural in nature. It's emotional. We have to believe that. We have to know that to be true. And I know that until we know, it's still going to linger. I guess it's our knowledge and the level of healing. Those two levels are relative to each other. And I was ready. And I've been amazing ever since. Got back into the gym hardcore, playing my drums as hard as I can. Now, the last thing I'll say is, for people who haven't taken this journey yet, what's even worse than the pain, and Steve illustrates it in the book as well as Dr. Sarno, is that it's the anticipation and the fear of the pain that is worse than the pain itself. Because you tense, you anticipate agony. And sometimes the anticipation of these things is even worse than actually experiencing them. And that's what I was doing. Living in constant fear of my own movement, of my own life, of the things that I love to do. It puts you in a very strange place. So now, as I said, I'm pain-free. And it didn't even take me the whole book. I was a third of the way through when I made this choice. I got it after a third of the book. I got it. And I hope you get it too. I really, really hope you get it too. Please buy these books. Please read them. Please consider them. Please ingest them, digest them. Spread them around to all your friends. Stand on top of the mountain and yell to everybody. We know why the medical system isn't spreading this word, because there's no cash in it. It comes down to the cash. That's it. They can't make money off you. They can't pump you full of pills, and they can't cut into you. That's where they make their dough. So just know that. You don't need them. You don't need them. You need here, and you need here. You need here, and you need here. And you need to connect the two. Because this is real. This is as real as it gets. So, Dr. Sarno, thank you, brother. Steve-O, I don't even know what to say, man. One day I want to see you and give you a hug. Amazing human being. Amazing. And thank you for everything. All right.